Hey everybody, how's it going? I think can't quite tell where and when I am who I'm live with. Don't really know what. It's hard to tell what's going on, but that's all right. Um, Today, I just really want to quickly um, just check in and maybe do a recap to a couple of things that we have talked about before. Um, you know, just to go back over a couple things. And one of the things that I wanted to look at was kind of all of the moves back into the Old Testament that Mark does so quickly in the very beginning of this text. I mean, even by verse 11, you have somewhere between six, seven references that go back to Old Testament texts, and not just any Old Testament text, like very influential and significant um, themes and stories and narratives back through Mark. So um, that's what I wanted to do today, um, just by going back and looking at that. I wish I could tell. I really wish I could tell if I was on with anyone else besides myself, which is fine too. I'm not that opposed to that, but also it would be nice to be talking to other people. So yeah, um, that's where we're at right now. Um, yeah, I got to this late, so I apologize for that too. But yeah, I think you're gonna have to just flounder with a couple of things here. Apologize for that. Um, yeah, I don't see anybody else. I don't see anybody else on. So I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to go and check if you don't mind. Just go check real quick in my YouTube. All right, yeah, it looks like I'm in there. Oh, that's good. All right, I totally apologize for that. Yeah, I shouldn't. Didn't mean to subject you to that. Um, but that's what happened. All right, so let's just jump in. And whoever's here is here, and whoever is not, and that's all right. Um, so again, like I said, I wanted to go back and look at this callbacks to what's happened before in Mark, and just do that real quickly as a recap of where we've been up to this point, and then say goodnight. So I have a little slideshow that I would like to that I'd like to put up for part of the time here. Um, if I can find it. Now that's gone away. Oh my gosh. You know, here we go. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to move that into the top. Yeah, so So the beginning before the beginning. You remember that that Mark begins by saying the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, but you can see right away that he already is going back to previous. He's going back to previous texts, and um, one of the things we see right away um, is that one of the echoes in Mark from the with the word beginning is to go back is a hint back to the very beginning with Genesis 1, um, where it says, in the beginning, when God created the heaven and the earth, God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. That's Genesis 1:1, and then skipping back down to later on in Genesis at the very end of that sequence when God claims that everything was very good. And hopefully we'll get back to why I think that's important to include in there. And then I just added Genesis 2 in there. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. There's a sense in Mark and in Genesis both that going back to the beginning is returning again to think about the vocation as well. What's the vocation that God created humanity for? And what's that going to look like? And how going to reshape that and reclaim that for people. So um, that's one thing we're going from back to that place, and then from there, uh, this from say to this mountain, which is uh, Ched Myers and others. It says with this echo, Mark wants to reclaim and renew the great story of God's creative activity in the world. Creation continues wherever the story is told and lived again. So part of what Mark is doing here by going back to Genesis is saying that this story that I'm about to tell, this good news of Jesus Christ, is picking up and renewing and reclaiming and recreating what happened at the beginning. And let's switch back. Yeah, and so I think that's really, really important to think about how Mark is saying that he's picking up a new reclaiming that story of creation and recreation, and you know what Dr. Blunt will say, about the gospel is that part of this beginning and part of this idea that whenever this creation is continues whenever the story is told and lived again, that hints at Dr. Blunt's title of his book, Go Preach. It's we who hear this gospel, we who hold to this gospel of this new creation that's happening, and this reanimation of what God is doing, are by our lives and our words and our testimony, we're a part of this recreation as well. Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to see where yeah. So that's where we go. That's where I want to go next. So that's Mark 1:1, and then by the second verse already, you can see that you're into a couple of near quotes from a couple of other texts. Mark 1:2 says, "See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way." And Exodus 23:20 actually has the "see" there in the Greek as well, but we don't need to worry about that. This translation says, "I'm going to send an angel in front of you," and the same word is messenger, angel, in front of you, to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. and then I'll come back to the Malachi text. But the thing about the Exodus text is that you have this text here that comes in the context of the people first becoming the people of God in the Exodus, and Mark is returning back to that theme again, in the use of the term wilderness, in bringing John in, and having John at the Jordan River, and the baptism there, and crossing over the Jordan, and all of these themes are coming together and colliding. And um, and the interesting thing about this Exodus text is that it comes, you know, as the people come to Mount Sinai, and there's a covenant renewal. There's a renewal of the relationship between God and God's people there, and it's right at the time when they're about to build the tabernacle. Moses will go up and get the instructions and get the law and get told the way that they are to build the place where God will come and reside among them. And of course, you also have the tweak on that too, that after that happens on the mountain, that Moses comes down, and of course the people have built a golden calf, and have failed to be faithful to God on the way. So interesting moment that Mark harkens back to, of this covenant renewal, and God's presence coming among the people with the building of the tabernacle, which, again, if you remember the story, is the whole point of why they are brought out from slavery, and they go into worship. So anyway, yeah. And then the Malachi text is actually an echo of the Exodus account. So Malachi later on in the story is picking up on the Exodus and reshaping it as well. And the Malachi text says, "See, I'm sending my messenger to prepare the way before me, and the Lord, whom you seek, will suddenly come to his temple." And I don't remember where, but somewhere I'll show you this the the context of this Malachi text and what's happening there. But Mark picking up on this Exodus and Malachi, and the way they are picking up on each other, offers this interesting look that Mark, already by verse 2, is just pulling together all of these significant themes in the Old Testament, bringing them to talk about Jesus. And the one thing that maybe it's here already. I'll see if it's what the next slide is here. Yeah, so I hope you can see that. I don't know if you can see that very well. I'm sorry about that. But so Exodus 22 and 23, as I was saying, is this covenant renewal, this establishment of the covenant with the people. And then Malachi is this moment of kind of trying to convince the people that they need to do right, if God's presence is going to be among them. And just want to show you some context about this idea of calling for preparation, and the idea of justice, which is in Mark as well. So Exodus 22 through 23 says, "You shall not wrong or oppress a resident alien, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. You shall not abuse any widow or orphan. You shall not spread a false report." And then Malachi 3:5, right after the quote, says, I will draw near to you in judgment. I will be swift to bear witness against those who swear falsely, against those who oppress the hired worker, the widow, and the orphan, against those who thrust aside the alien. Do not fear me, says the Lord of hosts. So again, this what's what's happening here in Mark is returning to these texts and really offering a look into what God has done in the past, what God has called for in God's people in the past, and and be and kind of unearth that and let that sit as the foundation for what the gospel of Jesus will be about. And just to connect that a little more, I'll show you this context of the Malachi text that Mark uses. You can see here that in 2:17, the people in complaint say all who are evil are good in Yahweh's eyes, that God is letting people get away with injustice. So there's they are claiming an absence of justice. And then in 22:17d, where is the God of justice? They cry out. There's this absence of Yahweh. There's an absence of God. And then in 3:1, the text that we saw, it says, "I am sending. I'm going to send. I'm going to send someone to prepare the way for my presence. My presence is coming." So there was an absence of my presence. My presence is coming. And then 3:2 makes this kind of claim: who can stand? Who will be able to stand in front of the judgment of God, and when God's presence comes? And so, whereas 2:17c at the top had absence of justice, again you have Yahweh claiming that my justice is coming. And so when you think about that in terms of Mark pulling that in to use about Jesus, and then with the context of justice that we saw, and then also you have, if you remember looking at the text, you have this immediate reference to the temple and kind of judgment on the temple. So Mark is really pulling together from this deep well of resources about what it means when God comes before the people, and what it means in terms of justice, what it means in terms of um, returning again to the covenant and the promises that God has made, and then the responsibilities and ways that we are to live out of that. Um, so yeah, and then of course in that takes us, I'm pretty sure, to um, to look at Mark 1:3, where you move into Mark 1:2 into 1:3, the voice of the one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight, is almost a direct quote from Isaiah 40, verse 3. A voice cries out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. And then I just threw in this Isaiah 49 because where it says, "Get up to a high mountain, O Zion, herald of good tidings. Lift up your voice with strength, O Jerusalem, herald of good tidings." The word "good tidings" there is an equivalent to the word gospel. So this word gospel that comes at the beginning of the gospel in Mark is also could be seen as an echo of the gospel of Isaiah. And Isaiah 41-11 was a well-known um, text and well-known segment of text that everyone would have, everyone in the Jewish tradition would have been very familiar with those phrases, which talked about Yahweh bringing the people back and coming again, bringing them back to the land and being present with them again. So this text too offers that same kind of feel as the Malachi text. Now the difference the difference here, and I talked about this, I think, whenever we talked about these verses, is that the Isaiah text has a much more, affirming uh, sense to it, and that God is, there's less judgment attached to it, let's say, um, and that it's about the what God is going to bring and what God is going to do, and yeah, lot less scary in some ways than the other one. But and I think I said this before too, is that the with um, with Mark highlighting these as quotes from Isaiah, even though they're a combination of others, and then ending with Isaiah, you could say that he emphasizes this theme of God, um, of God's steadfast love and mercy and hesed more than more maybe than the judgment side. But um, I'll let someone else decide about that. Um, and then just as we move through, just one more thing here, and I talked about this last time as well, but um, you know. Uh, Mark 1:9 begins with this, and it came to pass in those days. And I have here the once upon a time. This phrase again, when we think about Mark returning back and pulling back from all of these resources to make a point about what he's, to connect what he's talking about with the Old Testament. Is this phrase here is closely related to this idea that when you use the phrase "and it came to pass in those days," you are saying that look, this is a biblical reference back to the scriptures. Like I'm about to quote something, I'm about to say something that relates directly to our scriptures. And as it says here, this phrase only found in biblical Greek, so um, it's not used anywhere else. Um, oops. Oh, for some reason. Oh, there we go. I was going to say, oh, I got the title wrong here, but you'll see, you can see here. And then finally, to talk about the echoes, one last, well, there's another one that I might hint at, but Mark 1:11, the voice from the heavens, we talked about this last week, is a combination of Psalm 2 and Isaiah 42. Psalm 2, probably one of the most recognizable Psalms at this time of Mark's writing, and also the time of Jesus walking on the earth. This psalm about um, God placing the king uh, on his throne, and that Yahweh's king coming back to Israel and establishing their rule. And so the echo of Psalm 2:7 with "You are my son, the beloved. This day I became your father." Uh, you know, sets up the echo of Jesus coming into this kingly role. And then Isaiah 42:1, he is my servant who I upheld, my chosen one in whom I delight. I have bestowed my spirit upon him, and he will make justice shine on the nations. Again, you know, you have the echoes of the spirit that the echoes of the spirit there that comes as the dove falls, uh, you know, and you have again this talk about the one in whom I delight, and which echoes the with whom I am well pleased of Mark 1:11. Now, I don't know how much we talked about this, but Isaiah 42:1 is comes in the section on the suffering servant in the book of Isaiah. And the suffering servant is the one who through taking on kind of taking on suffering, uh, is able somehow to save uh, the people. And so you have like we talked about in the Exodus and Malachi and other texts, you have this very affirming kingly role, um, and then you have this servant kind of role as well. Um, and one thing that we talked about last week is the way that this kingly role of Psalm 2 invites would invite uh, conflict. That the Psalm 2 even goes into the idea of goes into the idea of how the nations will rage against this king, and the question then is, how will Yahweh's representative, how will God's representative, how will the Messiah, how will the King react to this conflict? And Mark right away takes us to Isaiah to say that the way that this person, Jesus Christ, the who's this good news is about, the way that they will react will be like the suffering servant of Isaiah. Now, that was um, that was an awful lot, and um, I would also say that the idea that came from heaven, and the cloud. It also in 10 you have the clouds being ripped open, and the dove coming down, and the Spirit, which I think we talked about this last week, but which really echoes again us Isaiah 64, which cries out for God to open the heavens, to rend the heavens and come down, and you have the same similar words being used. And the reason why I wanted to just bring all of this echoes and all of this stuff up is because when I preached a few weeks ago on Isaiah 61, that gets echoed in Luke 4 about the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and to bring justice to the poor, release to the captives, and all of that, and all of that. And then we returned to 61 again this week, but I found this article by Terence Fredheim, who passed away recently, about it's called "The Prophets and Social Justice: A Conservative Agenda." And his basic point in the article is about how the prophets are not necessarily like on some kind of brand new agenda. I mean, what they are talking about is a return to the basic vocation and covenant and relationship that God established, um, from the very beginning. And it's always a hearkening back to the foundation, to where we begin. Again, and just like Mark goes back to Genesis and then to Exodus and then through the Psalms and the prophets, to connect what's happening with the story. And I think it's important to think about this, because I think like sometimes especially when we think about like the idea of apocalyptic and what Mark is like, we think about how there's this brand new thing going on, and in some sense there is something new going on, but it's a reclamation and a renewal of what God always intended. And I think that, I don't know, for me that's just become really important to think about how when we are surrounded by so much that's going wrong and so much injustice and so many problems, um, I don't know how helpful it is to think that to to forget that at the base of it all is the fact that this is God's creation and that God created it very good. And yes, we have we've strayed far, far from what we were intended to do and who we were intended to be. But there is a straight through line from the first time that God spoke to God speaking at the baptism of Jesus and God continuing to speak to us through the Holy Spirit, um, bringing us back, calling us back to who we are meant to be, and how we're meant to live. And um, I think that's all laid out in all of these echoes in the ways that they call us back to the most fundamental relationship between God and God's people. And the ways of justice that God calls for, that are just, the basic principles of tilling and keeping, that go back to that, to Genesis 2. Um, and in some ways, it's simple. It's a return. It's what was always intended. Um, but it seems so new and so different every time because we get so far away from it. But I think maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it's easy. I don't know what it does, but for me, I think it's been good to think about, um, the path that we're called to, the way, of the Lord that we're called to, in Mark, and the way that Jesus lives, the way that Jesus shows us how to live, is is a is reclaiming who we are meant to be. It's renewing our humanity, to what it was intended to be. Um, so yeah, that's my recap. It didn't end up being that much shorter than the other times, but I spent a lot of time, trying to see if I was actually on air, and I'm not really sure that I am. But anyway, that's all right. Good to see you all. See y'all next week. I think we should be able to move into the next little part. We'll talk about the temptation in the wilderness, next week. All right, good to see you.